Merhaba. Hello, everyone. Marina.
Yes.
How are you? Very nice to see you.
Fine. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
you are in the space, huh?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So where should I be? I should also...
At the sea.
CSR Turkey or by the bridge. What about this? Alexandros, Tikanis, Kala. Hello, Alexander. Your microphone is closed. You should open the microphone. Where is Dimitri? The boss is not around.
No, he is here.
I'm here.
He just...
I can't.
All right. How are you?
Where are you? We can't see you.
Okay.
Open
Here
your...
I am.
Okay.
Very nice to see you all.
Yes.
Thank you for agreeing to be part of this event. How it goes. I hope the way I formatted it is okay, because I'm also trying. It's supposed to be 1 hour. I'm also trying to give some time to questions. Let's wait a little bit, maybe a few more minutes for more participants to join us.
Yeah.
People are joining in, and then I'll make brief introductions, and we'll get started with this. Okay. Okay. Marina, it's very dark where you are, with your background.
I do not like my background.
No, it looks dark.
I'm in the space.
Yeah, you are in space. You're in space.
Okay. Okay.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Fine?
You look fine. I'm just saying.
Oh, I can see a friend. Werner is here. Werner Gruber. Hello. How are you?
Merhaba Turkey. Good afternoon from Linz. How are you?
Thank you. Oh, you got an Istanbul t-shirt, huh? You miss Turkey.
Hard Rock Cafe.
Nice to see you among us, Werner. Welcome.
Thank you for invitation.
So do you know Dimitri, Werner? I'll introduce you with Dimitri. Dimitri is a professor at Kadir Has University. He's an old friend. And today, together with Marina from Ukraine and Alexandros from Greece, we will have a chat all together. And it's nice to have you, friends, joining us today.
Well, nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Okay. 1 second.
So there is an academic delay time, which is 10 or 10 minutes or something. We can wait.
No. We are starting.
We're starting immediately. Okay.
1 second.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome you all here. This is all part of a new series. Sorry, I'm trying to coordinate with Seren. Seren, you got my message?
No.
I sent you a message on WhatsApp. Okay. So this is part of a new series that we started at Kadir Has University at the Center for European International Studies, together with CSR Turkey, who's been a long-standing partner, in particular Serdar Dinler, and also a new consulting firm in Turkey, which is involved in such activities, the Social Approval Initiative. And the logic of this is really, again, it goes back to SDG 17, in a way, partnerships between academia, between civil society, between businesses, and trying to figure out where our world is moving. So, and the Social and Consciousness Unchained initiative is something that started sort of germinating during this COVID-19 pandemic, during this COVID-19 crisis, where we were, one saw the efforts either from businesses. I was watching a lot, even though I'm based in Turkey, in Istanbul, in my apartment right now. I was following the developments in Greece, where I saw a number of Greek companies take the lead, sort of like a national need to contribute to the effort, in particular at the beginning, where the issue had to do with medical equipment, masks and robes and everything else. And I gathered this also following the news here in Turkey, something that happened also in Turkey, and I assume also in Ukraine and every country in the world. And so, and because this is such an existentialist crisis in a way, it affects us all, whether as individuals, whether it's work-related, and because it's also tied in to the economy, and there is that coupling with the economic crisis, it makes one think, and this was a thing, social consciousness, which is something we've always been looking for. Companies do this in a way through the social responsibility, but as individuals also, the idea was whether there's a greater social consciousness, even today, as measures are slowly being lifted, and the fact that we have personal responsibility, that's also social consciousness, to wear masks in closed places, to be careful not to shake hands, to clean our hands, not to disperse the disease, the virus, so that we go back. So the idea was sort of to see whether we can look at different facets of the social consciousness and whether there's a new tendency developing. And talking to Serdar, who, if he were not a speaker, would be co-chairing the session with me, we thought of maybe starting with CSR. And that's why we reached out to the three of you, Serdar Dinler as the president of CSR Turkey, an organization he founded in 2005. But even though Serdar founded CSR Turkey in 2005 and has been actively involved also as a board member for a while with CSR Europe, is someone with long-standing experience in civil society, having contributed to the founding of about over 33 CSOs in Turkey proper. And he has a big professional involvement at the British Council. I met him at Kadir Has University about 10 years ago when he was there running the Lifelong Center. And that's how I learned a lot about CSR and how academia could be involved. And he's also done work with a major American NGO dealing with migration. And so as we were talking, we thought, okay, maybe we should reach and get other examples. Marina is someone that I have met through Serdar at a couple of CSO events, either at Kadir Has University in Istanbul and even in Brussels. She has been very actively involved. She is Ms. CSR in Ukraine with her organization called the Center for Corporate Social Responsibility Development, which is basically CSR Ukraine, which has been around for about 11 years now. And Marina has been very, very active in having the first online course of CSR, on CSR in Ukraine, as an initiator and founder of sustainability crash courses for hubs, incubators, and businesses, consulting on a number of projects, and also bringing in the issues of gender and gender equality. And also someone who has started a very nice initiative, which Serdar and I have also launched in Turkey, which is CSR Youth Ambassadors. It's how you get the new generations also involved in these activities. And when you give someone who is younger a title, that person carries that well and tries to become an ambassador for this and to their peers. And then our third speaker is a countryman, a fellow countryman, Alexandros Kostopoulos, who I met actually at a CSR training in Warsaw a couple of years ago. where we were getting trained. I was there with Serdar and others, and we were getting trained about how to become trainers on CSR and pass this information on as a multiplier event to our peers. And he is the business development manager of CSR Hellas and currently a member of the board of CSR Europe. Has previously been a co-founder of CSR Cyprus, and he's an external partner there. Has worked for the UN Global Compact Network Hellas in Greece, and also is very active in terms of writing chapters relevant to stakeholder management and stakeholder agriculture and different SDG trainings. And therefore we thought this would be a nice little regional sort of approach at trying to see what CSR, the role of CSR during the pandemic. But we'll talk about CSR specifically in the second round of questions. I would like to start with basically the first round, which is allow our speakers to speak briefly as to what actually companies have done in their countries during the pandemic. And maybe I'll start with the lady, Marina, to tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind. Otherwise, I can give the floor to someone else. Is it okay with you?
Yes,
Marina?
yes, it's okay.
Sure.
I can start, and hello everybody. I think it's a great initiative as usual, because Serdar and you, Dimitris, you always have great ideas and great projects. And I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. I have some presentations, so Alexandros inspired me to make the presentation, and I will share. Okay, could you allow me to share my screen?
Yes, yes. Seren?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I think now you can.
I
Now you
can
can.
now.
As a co-host, yes.
Yes. So so I decided to take just these 2 months, and I should say that business was very quick in Ukraine to try to get adapted to this new reality, although it was a shock also. We made several surveys among our businesses, and we can say that for companies, there were 3 key priorities. First is business operations. So how to continue them smoothly, because you know that this coronavirus and quarantine has impact on small and medium businesses, for example, on big production companies. And sure, it was very important for companies to have this continuity of business. The second is employees. What to do with employees, with their health and safety, with their salaries, how to keep their salaries, how to help them to get used to this remote work. And the third priority was country. How to help to hospitals and doctors, how to make donations to different foundations which were in charge of, for example, vulnerable people. So these 3 key priorities for companies which we observed during these 2 months. What we have done, and I think it's very important to help business to be visible, to have a word about their activities. So that's why we made so special media project with 20 companies where we ask them, how is their CSR now? What did they learn about this? We also made survey among businesses, and we put 3 key topics: healthcare, employees, and education. Because I think that when we are talking about healthcare, we see the impact now, we also should take care about education, because this impact is a kind of not which we can see now, but it will be in the long run. Because, for example, not every person, every kid, every child has access to, for example, remote education, to not every child has computer, etc., etc. And I think it's very important issue to think about. We started to continue to have our community, because it's very important for businesses to have this community, and we organize Sustainable Fridays with CSR Manager. We invited young people, and Dimitri, you talked about young people, and we decided to invite them and to collect best cases of companies' activities. And we also launched this initiative with hubs. And when we started to analyze what companies did, I think that it was very interesting that telecom companies, for example, they provide free mobile minutes for doctors. Also, a lot of activities of companies were focused on mental health of employees. For example, some of the companies organized Zoom kitchen, and throughout the day, every employee could go on the special link, and it was a kind of virtual coffee, because I think that we all suffer that we can't see this social interaction all of a sudden, because we usually try to because now we meet people with whom we work online, but the pleasant thing in the office when you face somebody, you meet somebody all of a sudden. Psychologists started to work with employees, and sure, a big amount of money went to hospitals. For example, when we organized this networkathon for young people, our young people collected 320 cases of companies, what the companies did for hospitals, for employees, etc. And we calculated that these 320 companies invested $34 million in healthcare, in employees, but mostly healthcare. Mostly we talk about, for example, personal protective equipment and artificial lungs ventilation equipment. And but also we think about young people, and we asked companies what about their vacancies, for example. And here I think it's one of the key issues that number of vacancies decreased by 40%, and companies are still thinking about how to get adapted to remote work. And we see that, for example, 38% of internships are transferred to online mode, but it means that 62% of internships are stopped. What is good that 92% of companies continue trainings for employees. And what is interesting that young people like this remote work, and they access this at 8% out of 10. So in general, I could say that companies invested a lot amount of money in healthcare. They invested a lot of their resources in employees and in continuity of businesses, also including work with suppliers.
Okay, very good, very interesting, very interesting. And very interesting work that you have done. It's something, it's a model maybe that should be copied also in other countries. And the mobilization, I mean, some of the projects too, I mean, even with the youth, but some of the projects that were created, especially the mental well-being, the Zoom kitchen and so on, are very interesting. Let's move on to Alexandros to talk to us a little bit about the Greek business sector and how it reacted to the crisis.
Thank you, Dimitris. I hope that you can hear me very well. Good afternoon, Serdar. Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks a lot for the invitation for one more time. And actually, it's been years that we met with Serdar from 2006, 2008, back that period, where we shake hands at that times I'm afraid that we will not do it again, at least in the few months period. So let's hope for a treatment, for a vaccine in the upcoming months. Although COVID-19 pandemic and the unexpected conditions it has actually created conditions that we never thought about. You know, Dimitrios, in crisis management, we said that there is the known unknown, like the earthquake, and we both countries know very well about earthquakes. We don't know the scale of it, but it's a known unknown factor. I'm afraid that pandemic is an unknown factor. So we haven't experienced a similar case before, and actually what everyone should do is to adapt its business model and their operation as part of their own self-responsibility for limiting the spread of the deadly virus, but also on stay in business and make what best every business can. So in Greece, in CSR Hellas, we actually, in the context of dissemination of good practices of corporate social responsibility and information on the contribution of companies in the period of unprecedented crisis and increased responsibility at every level, we go through actually and created a special website dedicated to COVID-19. And why we do that? Because it was, you know, sometimes not very clear words on what each business is doing. So we gather them all, and suddenly we face that 0.5% of our members, so more than 60 businesses, are doing donations and other initiatives to vulnerable people. And actually, I would like to use 3 examples, taking my thoughts from what Marina said before, and actually I will use the case of the banking sector, who has taken from the outset all the necessary measures actually to protect the health and safety of its customers and employees, while at the forefront actually of efforts to reduce the effect of the crisis and restart Greek economy. So it's not only about the Greek economy, it's not about Turkish economy, it's not about Ukrainian economy. We are facing a lot of difficulties, the 3 countries, but it's about the global economy. And I think that at least in Greece, banks have implemented a series of measures to support the real economy and making it easier for its private and business customers to deal with liabilities and loans, because that will be the next crisis, for my personal opinion, the upcoming months. If I may, a second example I would like to share with you is coming from telecommunications sector. That we all acknowledge that this sector is vital for the success story of remote working, of remote training, and of nowadays. So the telecommunications sector, several businesses, several companies working in that sector, taking initiatives, moving forward with a series of action related to the continuous connectivity of its customers. What is worth to mention is an initiative during lockdown where a company from the sector made a partnership with a private taxi company, the company with taxi drivers, in order to provide, you know, everyday groceries to vulnerable groups such as older people that could not have any ability, let's say, to go out to make their groceries, and also to people with mobility problems and even single parenting families. So this is for sure, I think, one of the best cases, a part of those of donations in equipment to the national healthcare system. And also what Marina also mentioned before about education, about training, and about potential future or potential needs of youth. I liked very much an initiative from an ICT company that decided not to support the Ministry of Health, but to support the Ministry of Education. Because as you can understand, e-learning or by distance learning is very well by the case that you have the necessary equipment. So they actually took the initiative to donate a huge amount of money into equipment, technical equipment, but also to transpose specialized tools by major global providers like Apple in meeting national needs. So how global accepted platforms could act in order to transpose actually our current national or local needs. So that's a first overview from our side.
Good. Very good, very interesting. I like the way you talk about different sectors and are very diverse and very original sort of interventions. Serdar, your turn. What have Turkish companies been doing? Unmute yourself, Serdar.
Sorry about it. Well, actually, Turkish companies really disappointed me because, I mean, they were not like the ones in Greece and Ukraine. Well, for a long time, this is the first time we human beings faced a globally affected crisis. And from a business point of view, well, this should be a defining moment for a leadership and action. But when I look to the Turkish business leaders, I still see that they are still on the time of the shock of the crisis. They could not overcome the shock of this crisis, COVID-19 pandemic. And I think most of them are still trying to understand what they need to do, because they found out this pandemic is a very big thing, very giant thing, and everybody thought that they are very small to fight against that, and left it to the public side, the government side. But on the government side, the government was very successful, and I can also say the Ministry of Health really handled this issue very successfully, plus the Ministry of Education on the top two level, I can say. After that, I can add the list, the municipalities. Municipalities were also very active on helping this. At the very beginning, government was also maybe in a little bit of shock, because they said that the personal protective equipments only government will provide. For example, the mask, they banned it for the private sector to produce personal protective equipments. They said that should be done with the government only, and they will distribute the mask and all those to the public, which was not maybe a realistic one. So that's why just a week ago, they again released that to be sold in the market. And if we look to the and also the producing a mask also needed a special permission to catch the standards of the this equipment. So that's why actually I think that slowed down the business world to take an action. But there were still few companies were very active, and maybe not company by company, but I can maybe tell them sector by sector. I think the textile sector was very active. There were a few companies, they applied to the government and get a special permission to produce the personal protective equipment, and they donated most of them. They did not, did this for a profit based. So textile sector, with the coordination with the government, with the special permissions, they did contributed a lot, especially on the personal protective equipment. Together with that, retail sector, especially this online shopping sector, was kind of productive because they started employing more and more people. They maybe tripled up their staff capacity, and they are really doing a good service. And they also developed a new nice rules on the delivery systems. Technology companies were a bit good because technology companies gave their applications or their services to the community for free. Now you can use lots of technology without paying anything. And hotels were very good. Almost all the hotels around the hospitals, they are giving free rooms to the doctors and nurses and whoever is working in this health sector. So they don't need to go their home. They just can come and stay in the nearest hotel to their hospital. And pharmaceutical sector did some projects, but the pharmaceutical sector projects were usually on the based on the information, giving information about this pandemic and how can people protect themselves with this pandemic and these kind of the side effects of the medicines and these kind of information that they provided. This is, yeah, what I want to
very interesting, very interesting. I mean, obviously, in all three countries, different sectors have tried to pull their weight. Even though, you know, Serdar's comment at the beginning about leadership in that sense is very interesting. It might also be a societal thing, who takes the lead. And you know, if I move on a little bit to the second question, which is the second one where I want to talk about, so what all of these efforts actually mean for business. All of these efforts, were these efforts actually ultimately, we know CSR also has a component which has to do with the brand name of the companies. There's a communication aspect to it, but it's also the social consciousness aspect that I really want to focus on. They took it upon themselves, they created initiatives, some businesses, not all. Others we know in Greece, they didn't have the capacity. They were waiting for government economic policies to fund the lack of activities because they were forced into shutting down. So that's also a reality. But were these efforts in part made in the name of CSR, or is there more to it? And what do you think can come out of this? What, from the business perspective? Maybe briefly, all of you address this, and then we'll go to a next round where I want to talk about the theme of social consciousness and how all these efforts, unless you want to answer them together, all these efforts, how do they translate into getting society, which is the individual and other sectors of society, whether it's civil society organizations, but then even Serdar talked about, you know, local authorities and so on. How do you work together in terms of maybe that, you know, it's a term I think in every country is being discussed, whether we are in the midst of a new social contract, because as we're moving out of the pandemic phase, it's about the economy rebuilding phase. And I think there's a realization that it's not business as usual anymore because the stakes are so high. And therefore, is it about a new social contract? And that's where for me, and I think for Serdar, as we launch this, social consciousness becomes important. So Marina. Yes.
So what does it mean for business and why they did this? Actually, 10 years ago, I heard one term which I didn't like. But now I think it's the time for this term. It's license to operate, social license to operate. And I think that now companies should do this because it's about their social license to operate. It's how they support governmental efforts. It's how they work with their employees, because it's also whether their employees support them or not, and whether this company will have the future or not if employees won't support them. And also it's about customers, etc. I think now companies show their license to operate. They prove it. And now society can decide whether this company deserve this license to operate or not. And actually, I think it's the time for CSR, because I've heard so many times now the term corporate social responsibility from governmental offices, from municipalities. I haven't heard these terms so many times before. For 11 years. Everybody's talking about corporate social responsibility. But for companies now, it's even more than this. And this is about license to operate.
Very, very interesting. Alexandre? Very interesting.
Fully agree. Yeah, fully agree with what Marina said. And actually, let's pose it in another way as well. It's not only to hear about CSR and again in at all levels, but also to see behind the lines. So what is it? What that means? Because CSR, can we let's say rephrase the S and say corporate solidarity and responsibility, because nowadays it's about solidarity. But, and if then we can change the R, so it's about readiness, it's about relevance, it's about reality, and finally it's about resilience. So what is all about the new CSR? The new CSR element is about what? And saying that, actually, I would like to make one or two comments on things like let's say telework. Telework, for sure, it's not a new concept, but nowadays, due to the pandemic, it's a game changer. But are we sure that all of us, all workers, can follow that pace, that change? And I'm afraid that I will not have a positive answer. They cannot, simply they cannot. I have downloaded several surveys performed around European Union, and they said that Greece and Romania are the last countries in teleworking. So I'm just wondering how our countries, Greece, maybe I don't know, that there are no data, at least in that survey, for Turkey or Ukraine, because they are not in the European Union 27 countries. But what if Greece and Romania are in the last two positions? Then how we can see the next years of competition, of countries' competition in global markets. So I'm very conscious about that, and I think that politicians as well as business leaders need to see their houses, let's say, their scopes, and see what they can do in order to not stay in a Slack or a Zoom platform, but let's pose the real question: how do we work, and how we can change that? It's like asking, hey, Dimitris, how are you? Or Serdar, how are you? The new question will be, how do you work? And maybe you can hear some noise behind me. It's not behind me, but in the same room. But I have my 6 months boy here, and another one, three and a half years old, and my dog barking outside in the balcony. So it's to be honest, it's a craziness. And I should be in the webinar or stay focused in my work. And there are 4 million people, the same story, 4 million parents, and 4 million other single families. So how do you work? I think that this is the new good morning. And then actually I'm wondering, I think that European Green Deal came here in order to set a new frame about our environmental consciousness, or about how we can set alternative, how we can save the world, or how we can anticipate and stop the environmental pollution. I'm afraid that by increasing the production of plastic for the needs of national health system in the fight against COVID-19, and the protection measures that governments have imposed through compulsory or optional use of protective equipment by citizens, are all necessary, but they raise challenges. on the one hand, actually, we have the risk of contamination from gloves and masks that are irresponsibly disposed on roads, parks, and sidewalks. And on the other hand, we have an increase in plastic pollution. So an issue on which measures have been launched, and in fact, our country follow the European directive as it should be, but there is a risk, there is a highly risk part of the effort for responsible consumption and production of plastics, and especially single-use plastics. So I'm posing an issue here. If COVID-19 was the prova generale, then I'm afraid that we cannot even think what's going to happen if the worst scenarios by OECD, by World Bank, major NGOs come into reality in relation to plastics problem and to environmental pollution and so on. So I'm not pessimistic, but I think that we are, sometimes, of course, we are facing a crisis situation, but I think that we haven't seen the whole picture of the crisis yet.
You raise a number of very interesting questions. I mean, first is how do you work is also social impact of how work is changing. It's tied a little bit to mental health, because what you're describing is whether one is alone like I am in my apartment, or you with your 2 kids and your dog, and your obligations as a father and a husband is also part of the problem. But then also the issue of the Green Deal is interesting, but the only thing I can say is that if COVID-19 is the unknown, as you said, therefore it might help us to start thinking, because at the European level, there are 2 things that this new commission launched. One was the Green Deal, and the other one was the digital economy. And they're all coming together right now, because this is part of the digital economy here that we're trying to work. So, but these are the issues we have to discuss, and they have larger societal impact. Serdar, unmute. Okay. Go ahead. No?
Okay.
All right.
First of all, I really want to take thank you, my friend from Ukraine, that she pronounced that social license to operate. That's also something that I am, pronouncing for a long time. And actually in Turkey, I established a social approval initiative. Actually, it is social license was not good on Turkish translation, so I call it social approval initiative. So I'm very happy to hear that this social is started pronouncing in the experts of this world. Well, what this social approval or social license bring to us, I want to continue from there. And from now on, for the companies, if they don't have a social aim, it is going to be very difficult for them, for their sustainability and for their profit. And today's successful leaders, maybe I can say today's traditional but successful business leaders, they think that the business should have 2 aims. One of them is the most important one, is profit, but together doing a responsible business. But the new business leaders in the future, they will definitely aware that with number of different crises, there will be lots of economic instability, and there will be lots of different social developments. And so that's why the new generation business leaders, companies, for their sustainability, they are trying to have a social aim, so then they can get an approval from the community, like social approval, then operate easily. Well, the new generation, that X, Y, Z generations, they are always looking for a job nowadays in the market that has a social aim. They are always looking for companies that, if they are trying to sort out a problem of the world, today's problem of the world, like some young people I met, they told me that I am looking for a company who works on poverty. I said, I don't know any company working on poverty, but I know some NGOs working on poverty, and I know that this is sustainable development goals. Number one, poverty is. I said, okay, this is good. So is there any company? And if there is no company, I will found one. So it looks like that the company, the young generation, young people will start establishing companies who are currently dealt with non-profit organizations, associations, civil society organizations. They are looking for a company who works on gender issues. They are looking for companies who works for decent education, decent work. So these are all, these sustainable development goals, 17 targets, they can all be commercialized as companies, and they can be implemented and be profitable, I think, in the future, because that are working for to sorting out a social issue. What is happening nowadays with the business? At the first stage, when we heard about this COVID-19, they first actually did not know anything about it, and the business was very afraid. But now when they learn what's happening, now they are worrying. They are they are wondering and worrying what is going to happen. Well, it has affected us, first of all, on the health side, yes, but it is definitely going to affect us on the social side, psychological side, economical side, political side, and even on the religion side, it is going to affect us very much. So all these stakeholders should get together and try to find something. And there's another point that I want to mention. In the new normal, or after this, some sectors probably will be disappeared, because we were very much generous on establishing new sectors, and then calling them this is development or this is innovation or something. But now we will definitely eliminate the unnecessary sectors. For example, last 2 months I was at home, I'm at home, and I couldn't go to barber, hairdresser. So what happened is I learned how to cut my hair, and I cut my hair with the help of my wife. So I'm thinking now, after this quarantine, well, should I go to barber anymore, or I can manage at home? And the other thing is, last 2 months, me and my wife, we are cooking our own bread, and I'm thinking that maybe we will continue after that. We liked it and we enjoyed. Maybe we don't need to go to bakery. Maybe we will not have this in the future. And the last one I want to say is, actually, currently we are very much enjoying or targeting to have everything in a big scale. Mega cities, mega shopping malls, mega airports, crowded places. This is, I think, also changed. Now we're going to go for a minimalist world. For example, I don't want to go a big holiday resort where there are 6,000, 8,000 people are having holiday at the same time. Rather than that, I'm looking for a small boutique hotel where there are only maybe 5, 6 rooms. So now everything is going to rechange. Maybe it was the back time, but nobody's interested in mega things, big cities. So this is also over for business world, I can say for now.
Well, I'm not sure all these things will occur. I mean, right now you're baking your bread and you're not cutting your hair. Your wife is cutting it for you because you have time and you're at home. Once you can go out and you'll be going around, you might not have the time to do that. But you're right. We've learned to that some things we don't really need. Maybe we take for granted, and we can make do with anything. Just like the whole debate right now in Greece, they're opening the beaches, and people are rediscovering not the organized ones, which are always more expensive, but then the ones that are open to the public. And that's how one used to go swimming in the past, with a towel, and you went in the water. You did not need to buy coffee somewhere, your beach umbrella, and everything else, and you still had fun. But nevertheless, you're right. The crisis has created many conflicts, and at the end, you talked. I mean, I like the part about social license and the new generation of business leaders, and it's very interesting what you also said about what the younger generation seek. I am not sure it's everybody. I think it's the people we interact with, and that seek things different ways. So you know, someone says, you know, I want the gender issue, I want to deal with that per se. That's a different concept. And I don't know how companies will therefore adapt to this. But it's very interesting. And I think this is where you have the linkage maybe with society, business and society, and there has to be a big discussion. But there's another factor too. And because I really wanted to widen a bit the debate. By the way, for those listening in the chat, you can ask questions. There's already a question for Serdar, but we'll get to it in a second. Maybe go a quick round. You touched upon the societal impact, but I was thinking, because Serdar talked about mega cities, and you know, it's very interesting. If you go to SDG 11, for example, which is about cities and communities, there's nothing about pandemics there. It's about everything else, even though we know that that's where the world is going. We know we are all living in cities. We try to get away, but it's more difficult, easier said than done. And we know that we are building everything in cities, right? And we have cities, countries like Singapore, where there is also horizontal agriculture, right? Because buying goods, products is too expensive, and they're trying to grow them in the cities and things like that. And so the cities are not going to go away, and it's our ecosystem. Whether the issue is, as Alexandros says, working at home and the impact of this has, or whether it's going back to work in your workplace. And so, and this is also linked a bit to the Green Deal. And I mean, I really wonder, I mean, how do we move ahead? I mean, we've accepted the fact, we talked about younger generations, we talked about different business sectors being involved. We talked about, both Marina and Serdar, about the social license, right? Social license to operate. Alexandros, I like the way, you know, the social becomes solidarity and the responsibility becomes readiness or resilience. So we are playing with the whole notion of CSR and how businesses approach it. But how do you start a dialogue which has societal impact, which is not limited to 30, 40 people as we're discussing? And I see that a lot of the people watching are students that have also been involved in some social impact projects and have an interest. But how do you start a wider dialogue to actually have an impact on societal change? Is this something that's possible? And how do you move ahead as we are phasing out of COVID, even though we're not really phasing out, it's there. And maybe the future pandemic is there also, to a new model of the economy. So Marina, you want to say a couple of words about this?
Yes, actually it's a very interesting question. But I think that SDGs can give us answer. It's SDG 17, it's partnerships. And by the way, today is a very interesting day because CSR Europe launched Pact for Sustainable Industries, where they would like to unite industries and to make them more sustainable. And I think that partnerships, making alliance, uniting different stakeholders will be a kind of the way forward. And here I also would like to say that it's interesting, the situation with this virus, because even in Davos risk report, you can't find any word about this kind of virus, but now we have it. But when we talked about different swans, it's not a black swan, it's white swan. And Nassim Taleb told us that this is white swan. But when I was listening to Alexandros, I recall a new swan. It's green swan, and it's about climate challenges. And I think that that's why SDGs are very important, because we can't forget about other extreme things which could have impact on us. And here, not only viruses and pandemic, and nobody knows about the second wave and third wave, etc., but it's also about thinking about people who are in poverty. And now we will have a lot of people in poverty, and you know that the level of unemployment will be huge, and it will be the start of new financial crisis. Let's think about this. And I just showed you the situation situation in Ukraine when 62% of companies, for example, they stopped their internships, and many companies closed vacancies. And also it's about climate change. And yes, no, we also, and this COVID-19 also has an impact on these climate challenges we have. And there are many other things. For example, gender equality. And for me was a big shock when people are at home, when families are at home, and there is a very high percentage of domestic violence, and what we should do for this. So I think that making partnerships around SDGs will be a way forward.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Alexandros.
Yes, Marina, you gave me so many things that I would like to answer, but I would say a few words. For sure, yes, CSR Europe today launched a new pact for sustainable industry, but it's not only about sustainability in the connotation Dimitris and Serdar like CSR. It's about sustainability. It is whether they are being the market in 1 year or in a 5-year period. So we will fight for that at CSR Europe at country level. You will learn more in the upcoming weeks and months. This will guide to a sustainability week during October from 25th until 29th, I think, or 30th of October. It will be a week full of webinars around sustainability, responsibility, and so on. But I don't want to take more time on that. I just want to actually share something that I prepared for something else, and just give me a second to share screen. I think that I will manage to do it successfully. So here we are, and I'm pretty sure that you have already saw that before. Is the SDGs, but the SDGs in an angle of the three pillars of economy, society, and the environment. And that's why I referred to the environment just before, because it's the shield of our societies, and society is the shield of the economy and the businesses. But suddenly, although we had that excellent and tasteful wedding cake, here we have the bad thing, pandemic, which affect everything, actually, not only business, but societies and the environment, as I saw and as we discussed. So what we need to back to the basics, Dimitris, I believe, back to where we were in 1995, when Jacques Delors, the Commissioner of European Commission, and in 2000, when Kofi Annan said to businesses, let's make a new social contract. And now, 20 years later, here is not a Kofi Annan, but a COVID-19, Mr. COVID-19, allow me to say, ask from us, is asking from leaders to stop, discussing about financial things, about economies, about borders, about geopolitical conflicts, and so on. It says just to focus on the materials. And how important is that? And how important is that in relation to what we preach, actually, about materiality and about inclusivity and so on. And so what we should have, it is a new SDG, I think, the new SDG 18, because we have only 10 years to go. And something else. It is all about resilience, and it's about adaptation. As Serdar said, maybe I'm not fully agree with your example due to my long hair, but I fully understand that every business needs to change nowadays. And just another very quickly. Just one slide I would like to share with you is I try to find out in the United Knowledge Platform, United Nations Knowledge Platform, and in surveys, if there are indicators that underlining public health issues or health issues within the SDGs, and I found out that there are more than, or just 59. There are 59 indicators. 27 for sure it is within SDG 3. But take a look on no poverty and no hunger. Take a look on gender equality. And Marina, you are absolutely right. It's not only domestic violence. It's not only alcohol, the increase of alcohol. It's also the increase of online betting, which is threatening families and the economies of the families. And it is also, of course, mental health problems. So it's a wider aspect that forced us to that new social contract. I'm not sure if it is nowadays anymore, you know, a social license to operate, because in order to operate, you need to have some basic finances or basic manufacturing or basic human capital. I'm afraid that if we cannot protect our people, if we cannot protect the environment, and if we cannot protect the learning methods, and if we cannot upgrade them, I'm afraid that we will not be here in a few years period to talk about social license to operate, but natural license to operate. So I'm just you know, worrying about those things, and I will stop sharing my screen, and just if I have 1 more minute, I would like to share with you. I tried to find out some graphs. Unfortunately, I found out only texts. So in a recent survey, and I would like to share that with you, made from 6th to 22 of April, in the University of Aegean, using the survey bot, there are some amazing findings saying that by 2 Greek professors, saying that 56% of respondents were worried about joblessness and becoming. Actually, they're expressing their uncertainty if all the business required to shut down during the lockdown will be able to resume as before. So it's maybe, Serdar, the other side of what you said. Maybe we need that bread store. Maybe we should, you know, invest not in stocks anymore, but with our everyday actions. And I keep that. And what makes me impression also is the 66% said that they will pay more attention from now on to their personal life and well-being, to their actually to develop better skills and learning, to dealing with everyday lives, and 55% said that they are get into artistic or other cultural pursuits, and they will invest, and hear that, in family relations. Amazing. It's like a restart from my point of view. It's like a restart. So let's I think that our duty, our CSR, as CSR Europe, as national partners of CSR Europe, is actually to pass that messages to business leaders. So it's not only about stock prices anymore. It's about existence, and both natural and social license to operate.
Very, very touching. Actually, as I was listening to you, because Serdar and I are talking about our next, when we'll do the next one of this series, and we were talking a little bit about, I was telling him ideology is important also. And as I'm listening to you, and this is a good thing, because we're also trying to, from a business perspective, and the role is how outdated, not only the business leaders, we have to convince them, but also political parties are in their argumentation. Alexandro, I follow the press in Greece, and we see this debate about whether social democracy is back. Fine, it's a nice debate, but it's in terms that do not reflect the present. They do not take part of all of society and all the elements as you're describing the new world we're going towards. And I think it's very interesting how we have to somehow start talking and convincing, maybe, yeah, and not only convincing, but I think believe in our ability to convince larger segments of society that there needs to be a debate around the new world that is becoming, that we are living through. Serdar.
Well, I started dealing with the CSR thing almost a quarter century, so 25 years or something. And for the last 15 years that is with the association. Before that, it was, you know, as an individual. And I'm really fed up of telling in the conferences or presentations the definition of CSR. So I don't like to say definition. If people ask me what is CSR, if they ask me definition, I have a very short definition, which is whatever you're doing, do it properly. So in the new normal, from now on, everybody, whatever they're doing, everybody should do it properly. The government, the NGOs, the private sector, academicians, media, whoever, everybody should do whatever they're doing properly. We don't have a luxury to do something wrong anymore. That luxury is finished. We don't have a luxury to forgive people anymore. If they made a mistake, we're gonna get rid of them. No chance, no forgive for these kind of things. So what we need to do now, where it's going is, we human beings definitely be very clever on this process, but not only to individual level, but also in the public level. And we need, to do that, we also need only one thing: stakeholder engagement, partnership. We don't have any chance. We have to be shoulder to shoulder rather than being across and compete and fight. We need to be shoulder and shoulder and put our powers together. If we do that, we can have a healthy environment. We will be respecting the environment, and we can go for renewable energy systems, recycling systems, and an important one is very good, clever, innovative business models we have to create from now on. And well, and the other thing is, I mean, this is something I tell time to time, and maybe you friends know, and it is really time to, from ego system to ecosystem. It is time for us to convert ourselves from egos, leave the egos, to go to ecosystem. If we don't do this, if business will not do that, it won't work. We need to help each other very much. We need to respect each other very much. It doesn't matter who we are, color, diversity, no problem. Everybody, we have to respect each other. And whatever we're doing, we also definitely put a social aim for that. And whatever we are planning to do, we will say that which problem of the world that is looking for a solution. That's what I'm briefly trying to say is, whatever we're doing, we should be addressed to one of the Sustainable Development Goals. Whatever we're doing, this is what everybody's going to look in the future. That's what we have to be prioritize in the future. We have to be responsible, transparent. We have to be accountable, and we have to work to increase the quality of the capacity living life of the public people, not only for us. And being profitable is not the only aim anymore. The success will come. They will evaluate the business world success with their social, environmental, and economic impact. If this triple bottom line would not have in the business, in the companies, I don't think that they will be successful. This will all bring trust, and when there is trust, then you can have a social approval to operate. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We are slowly running towards the end of the webinar. I mean, these are all very interesting. It's very interesting how we all feel inspired. My slightly different perspectives, but inspired that, you know, this crisis has forced us as individuals, and then not only as individuals, but within the domains which we work and operate, to rethink things. And I think, and I hope this is also intergenerational. It's also across genders and across different segments of society. And I think this is what the debate is about. You know, I keep thinking, I was telling Serdar the other day that if we are really at a period which is defining, some people say, and you know, we are at the great crash era in a way. And how do you deal with the great crash of the 30s? And you had two basic models develop. You had the rise of populism and Nazism in Europe. In the US, FDR, who had just become president, decided to launch a New Deal. He realized that society had to be rebuilt and preserve whatever American democracy was at the time. And I think this is some of the things. And then, of course, the interesting thing is that business, one would say that operates under any environment. But here, I think because of the existentialist nature of what we have been facing, we are actually trying to maybe rethink and redefine how business should operate. The idea is whether we actually have impact on actually doing this is something that we need to talk and discuss. We are coming towards the end of the meeting. I just have, there are two questions very quickly. One is to Serdar. It seems some of the issues you raised were polemical. How did you come up with the idea that Turkish industry leaders do not react on time? Because that's how you started your first round. And so are you referring to something in particular and so on is one thing. And then the other one is, well, yes, there's a question about, from one of our students at Kadir Has University, Shadi, about the impact on tourism as a business sector. We've been talking about it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying the questions that are there, but whether it's in Greece, Ukraine, and Turkey, post-COVID-19. And are we going back to domestic tourism? I don't know how this fits in here. And also another question about the rapidity of response. How are companies now looking to allocate the CSR funds towards COVID-19 related programs? Okay, these are the basic questions there. We have 5 minutes and then we all go on Alexandros' duties and the rest 2 hours. Who wants to tackle them? Serdar, you want quickly to say something about what you said?
Well, yeah, I didn't actually address any industry or sector. Actually, what I tried to say is in Turkey, the government was very dominant on controlling the older system, not to take any risk. So that was the main thing. So that's why it really dominated a lot. They said that establishing a mask is a special permission you need to do. They banned the export or import of these goods or equipments. So they wanted to control everything at the beginning. So this actually a little bit of frightened the other sectors to be more active. They waited what it is going to happen. But a week ago or something, everything is, the government looks that everything is under control. So they released and the business started working on this. This is also parallel to the support, to the philanthropy, help, CSR, because government also created that we are only allowed to collect donations or everything. Nobody else can do it. It has a special permission to do that. So that's why it was again very much dominated by the government. So that's why the other sectors were not that much in of this support. But nowadays, again, government looked at everything is controlled. There is no risks anymore. So again, nowadays they started, business started on CSR issues to help. The first budget that the companies cut, especially in these kind of crisis time, is the CSR budget and training budget. I mean, many of our CSR programs are canceled with the business and the trainings are canceled. Now the business people are calling me and saying that they need a training, but they need a very short, pragmatic training which will help them to overcome this crisis. But they don't, they don't look for any other thing. They just said short, practical and pragmatic programs for them to help overcome this crisis. So that's, I mean, that's kind of, I don't know, is it real? Is it an opportunist style of thinking? Or is it they really need that? Otherwise, I believe that they should first train their staff on how can they be careful about this pandemic? How can they protect themselves? How can they, in their house or in their environment, protect themselves? Maybe they should train this at the beginning rather than helping them to overcome the crisis in a practical way. Thank you. Just two of them I tried to answer.
Very good. Marina, Alexandros, you want to tackle the CSR funding or the internal tourism?
Greece, Alexandros, can you tell about hotels?
I can show you just one slide, and I think that you will find it very useful. I don't know. Yes, I can do it here and click here. All right. So now I think that you can see the screen. Yes. No, sorry for that. It's actually this information is published in The Economist, is from Goldman Sachs, saying that Greece is #1 as facing the hardest difficulties in our times, as our GDP is mostly based in retail, transport, and hospitality. So for sure it will be a real problem, and I don't think that the domestic tourism can save the game, as we said in the basketball. So it's no more than one third of the total amount derived from the tourism. So for sure we need open airs, open airplanes, open airports, with safety, of course, in order to see things coming back to normality. But I would pose a question without an answer. Is the hospitality and tourism sector, let's say, used in a proper way the last 20 or 30 years in both countries, Greece and Turkey? Are we sure about that? So it's only to use our resources for 3 or for 4 months while we have 12 months every year. So it's open questions. I don't have the answers, but for sure, I believe that there are other sort of parts of the economy that might be equally profitable as tourism and as also other things like renewable energy based on sun and wind power. So maybe we need to think alternatively. And what actually I would like to answer also in very short way to a question posed to me. I think the question is how to allocate their CSR funds. What I suggest is actually to allocate them equally to all function, to all basic function of the business. So if the basic function for a business, which might be a private university, is to equip with more skills their professors, then they should do it. It's not a CSR in a donation or in a solidarity way, but it's about investment in manufacturing, in human, in social, in an ecological, or sorry, in environmental aspects. So it's fine by me. Let's make zero the CSR cost, but let's invest to the material things. And if the new representative of CSR would be the health and safety manager, or the HR manager, or the communication manager, it's fine by me. Because we have to see our final destination, our goal, our aims. And our aims, as I said before, is to stay in the business. So businesses might not need so many solidarity actions, but focus to treat things and societies and problems that nobody else could maybe touch.
Thank you. Marina.
Yes, Dimitris, and I would like to continue because CSI is also about materiality issues and it's not about charity, etc. So I think in terms of allocation of funds, business companies need to talk to stakeholders and they can't forget their stakeholders. And I think now we can have the situation when, for example, companies forget about their partners NGO. And now NGOs, for example, they need company support. And also, for example, suppliers, they need company support. And I think that stakeholder dialogue, understand different stakeholder, and this is a good term also, stakeholder capitalism. I think it's also very, very important now and we can see it. And in terms of tourism, I think that each situation provides challenges and also opportunities, and innovations is a kind of thing which stems from necessity. I think that tourism industry could rethink, and Dimitri, you talked about rethinking its business model. And I think, for example, you remember, for example, in Ukrainian channel, we could see this restaurant from Netherlands, and I saw Bernardine Bos here. Bernardine, regards to you. Restaurants with glass cabins, when a couple could sit in glass cabins, etc. It's a new approach. So I think that we should think about new approach. And for me, I think one of the sector we should think about is real estate, because now companies understand that not all companies need offices, and this is what it's a result of digitalization which we had to do, and that's why I think we should also think about innovating our business models, and this is we should do it together in partnerships. And yes, Serdar, we should talk about social license, etc. So rethinking and innovations and talking to stakeholders.
Well, very good. Well, I'd like to thank the three of you for a very, very interesting discussion. Very interesting discussion, which I think we need to speed up. We need to make sure within our environment at national level, international level, pursue it, because I'm thinking tourism, for example. Right now, I know, given the size and the impact of tourism and all related industries in Greece, the debate is about opening up and saving part of the season. It's about the immediate, as opposed to thinking about remodeling, rethinking. You see, and so if you tell us that someone who is in the tourism business, who has an enterprise, who is, who sees the whole planning crumble and debts and whether they will survive or not, they cannot rethink. Maybe they are rethinking, but I think this is part of the issue right now as we reopen the economies, and we know some sectors are not going to work. Marina, you mentioned unemployment, which is going to be huge. It's already huge anyway. We can see this. And the need to reform, the need to rethink, and the crisis provides opportunity. And I think we need to continue this dialogue. So I'd like to thank you all. I think it was very illuminating hearing three perspectives, different perspectives, but also influenced in part by what's happening in your national settings, because you know your business community as well. And hopefully we'll see, maybe in the future we can have a dialogue again in a few months to see where we stand, whether some of the things that were brought out here are being actually being implemented or thought at a wider level. So thank you, Marina. Thank you, Alexandre, Serdar, my partner in crime in this process. Thank you. I think we started a new project which makes sense, and we will be continuing this. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Everybody, thank you. Nice to see you all. Thank you for participating.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.